evening. My name is Priscilla Flory, and I live in Melbourne. And it is my pleasure to be here tonight to thank you for taking time, giving of yourselves, giving of your skills to lead a most sacred calling. Our children are the most important treasures in Madison County. And you have a high calling, not just by the people of Madison County, but you have a high calling by God, because He has created them with a purpose and a plan, and you all are part of that purpose and that plan. And so I personally want to thank you for your time, your gifts, your skills, and it is my privilege to pray for you, which I would like to do now. So Father, thank you. Thank you for this wonderful group of people. Thank you that they have been called, they have been chosen, you have a purpose for them, and you have a plan. And Father, we thank you for each child of Madison County. We thank you for their parents. We thank you for their families. We thank you for the plans and the purposes that you have for each child. We thank you that you are a good Father. We give you thanks and praise. Thank you for what you've already done here tonight. Thank you what you're going to do. And right now, thank you. Thank you. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Flory.
Mesha Jones, Radiant, Virginia. The last speaker was correct. Our kids are sacred. And they deserve to be in an environment that's inclusive and addresses their needs, their educational needs. Again, another agenda that does not address anything to do with the kids' education. Nothing. Again, another agenda that does not say how we support our teachers, what you need from the community to come in to help support, to bring up our test scores, to make sure that our kids can read. Nothing. Nothing at all. Personal priorities on the agenda. This board has done nothing but create a divide and has done nothing to bring the parents together to be part of their children's education, but more so separated. Nothing at all. Nothing. Every month we come here to find items on this agenda of what we're going to do to support our kids and make them better. The teachers are doing it. There's such a disconnect here. Such a disconnect. The community deserves better than what you're doing.
Thank you.
I'm Terry Sisson. I'm from Riva, Virginia. I'm a school psychologist. I was a school psychologist in Madison County for 6 years. And I'm a proud mom of Andrew Sisson. He's a junior at Madison County High School this year. I know one of the things that will be discussed later is allowing teachers to have guns in the classroom. And I realize that within that, it was already stated that right now it's not legal in Virginia. One of my questions is, why do we keep bringing up things that are not even legal? Why can't we talk about things that are an actual possibility to change, such as helping our students with their reading scores? Before we go forth and talk about allowing teachers to carry handguns in the school system, I want to bring up a few facts. According to Everytown Research, which is an evidence-based program, an armed teacher is much more likely to shoot a student bystander or to be shot by police themselves if there is an armed shooter in the building. Access to firearms, irrespective of age, triples the risk of death by suicide and doubles the risk of death by homicide. Is that what we want in our schools? Assessments from Teach Plus and the NEA ask teachers whether or not they want guns in the school, and they strongly oppose it. 80% for Teach Plus and 82% for the NEA. There was a 2019 study that talked about school shooter characteristics, and in that there was no evidence that the presence of an SRO in a school building stopped an active shooter from coming in. And it is no evidence that armed teachers would be any more effective than a trained SRO. On the contrary, they would likely increase rather than decrease gun violence in schools. And then you have to look at liability. Who's going to be liable? Who's responsible if something goes wrong? A student can find or steal a teacher's firearm. The weapon could accidentally discharge. Teachers can shoot innocent bystanders. Who's going to deal with that? Is that something that you all are willing to take on? And in Kansas, when districts sought to arm teachers, insurance companies refused to insure the school at all. So who's going to have our backs? I want to say that teachers are not trained sharpshooters. They're not trained first responders. They're caregivers, and that's what we need them to be. I'm going to email all of my research to you, as I did last time I talked. There are alternative ways to provide safety in the schools, and I'm going to send you a document that talks about how to do that. And I'm also going to send a link that is every incident mishandled guns in schools.
Thank you, Mrs. Yes.
Thank you.
We had a graciousness moment in which a number of us said, no, you go first, no, you go first, no, you go first. I'm Mike Sharman from Novum. Thanksgiving time, so thank you to each one of you. Each one of you out there, both staff as well as the elected officials, the student representative, for giving of your time. You know, just coming as I do most of the school board meetings, it seems like an enormous amount of time that I'm doing, but I know you are multiple and multiple and multiple more times, so thank you very much for that. Thank you for being stalwart and willing to follow the law as opposed to just what people are demanding you do. As a public official, it's often so hard to make that distinction between serving the people and yet serving the people according to the law. So the number of the things that you have are in regards to the sexually explicit content, both in curriculum as well as the libraries. So it's important to look at what the law is about it as opposed to just what we all feel like we want to do. So first, the Code of Virginia tells you you have to make policies as a school board, and you have to make them timely. So one of the things that I've heard at past school board meetings and that are in the paper is that you aren't following past school board policies. But the one they're referencing is for the public, not for the school board. You have to follow the Code of Virginia. The Code of Virginia has said this past July, they passed a law that says for y'all to look at sexually explicit material. Not what maybe Ms. Collier thinks is sexually explicit, or Mr. Sheeds, or on down the line, but a specific statute that defines what is sexually explicit and does it in an objective way, not a subjective way, like what is lewd and lascivious. No, it details it out explicitly. Then one of those things, it lists out a number of things, but the easiest one to pull from that sexually explicit is if it describes sexual conduct, you're not supposed to have it in the schools. And sexual conduct is just what we think. I mean, we could list it the most important things, though, is that in every single bit of your instruction, you're supposed to have moral education. 22.1208, emphasis on moral education, says the entire scheme of instruction in the public schools shall emphasize moral education through lessons given by teachers and imparted by appropriate reading selections, which would necessarily exclude sexually explicit material. Then you have character education required, 22.1208.01, and it says the purpose of, and it says you shall establish character education, and I'll let y'all get to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whoever wants to go next. This is important though. If you could please not adjust this mic, it's very important. It stays exactly like this. I know you can hear it here, but people listening at home, and for when Miss Liz Patterson has to go back and transcribe all this, she can't hear anything coming through the recording.
It's upside down.
Leave it just like this.
It's upside down.
No, it's fine.
Thank you. To the next person, please come on down.
Lisa Davis, Locustdale. I just got a couple of issues, comments. Concerning your ESSER funds, I'm not against federal funds as long as there's an understanding that once they are gone, that additional monies required to maintain these ESSER programs are not going to be a burden on the Madison County taxpayers in the following years. These programs must be programmed into future budgets at the expense of eliminating something else. Like any federal program, once the ESSER money dries up, they expect the awardee to take over any follow-on cost. I hope this school board does not expect Madison County taxpayers to pay more to continue maintaining whatever was bought or people hired. I just want to ensure that future school funding recognizes this and not get complacent with the ESSER funds. You must make hard choices on your budget. Also, in your breakdown of this funding by section and bullet format, where can we read the detailed data such as evidence-based interventions, loss in structural time impacts, and how many students are still virtual learning and per student costs? I'm just asking for next level of details. And also, again, I read many of the restricted books in the high school library and questioned the merit in some of the books and how this is enriching kids' lives. Again, kudos for trying to meet all Madisonians' concerns by keeping the books in the library, but have them restricted with parental or guardian approval to check out. You had to do something short-term until the policy was written. Madison County High School Handbook ironically states under its dress code, students' clothing must be free from language that is profane or images that depict illegal conduct, or students must ensure that their private parts are covered. Yet students can get sexually explicit material in the school library. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Peggy Carpenter from Brightwood, Virginia. I'm very concerned about the education of my great-grandchildren. As was said earlier, they are a gift from God, and it is our responsibility to raise them in a way that is not objectionable to Him. I want to just discuss the issue of parental guidance. All of us were children at one time, and we all remember being very inquisitive, right? Parental permission, I think I stated it wrong earlier, parental permission may give their child permission to check that book out,
But when they are reading and looking at something that's sensational, they are bound to show it to their inquisitive friends who do not have permission. And I want you to think about that when you are making your policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Karina Barden, and I live in Wolftown. The First Amendment of our Constitution states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. End quote. One of the brilliant things about our Constitution is that practicing our First Amendment rights helps citizens develop critical thinking skills and moral fiber to responsibly handle all our other rights. Part of being a well-informed voter and a good leader is the ability to look at any issue from a variety of perspectives, which is what literature and factual information help people do. Our teenagers are on the cusp of being voters and are on their way to being the next generation of leaders. The Supreme Court in 1943, West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, and again in 1969, Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District, affirmed that students do have First Amendment rights, and these rights are not suspended when they enter school property. This board has repeatedly demonstrated a disturbing level of intent to police, censure, and control the developing sexuality of other people's kids, in part by limiting their access to educational material and literature under the guise of what is good for the students. And in doing so has disregarded the fact that parents can contact the school for themselves and exempt their own students from materials that they would prefer to discuss at home, and the First Amendment rights of the students. At the same time that this board seeks to suppress information and ideas, there's nothing notable being done about staff morale and retention, about student mental health, or abysmal SOL scores. And now the board wants to explore bringing firearms into schools. Whether talking about the plot of a dystopian novel or actual historical events, this scenario never ends well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin Scott, Brightwood. When folks accuse you guys of pushing Christian morals or your own parenting choices on all the students here, I just gotta vehemently disagree. I think when you eliminate radical and completely perverse and inappropriate content from the school, that's not in any way censorship, rather that's leaving room for parents to make choices. We can't just have every crazy and inappropriate idea because somebody argued it. Assume that it has an equal place at the table with parents, and ultimately, you guys have to go err on the side of caution. If somebody wants to take these nasty books and go read them to their kids at home, God bless their hearts, that's fine, but I've actually listened to them argue that my child has to be, in order for them to feel okay, like you guys aren't censoring, they're demanding that my child be exposed to it? That makes zero sense. And there's a word for that, it's called grooming, and that's what they're arguing. This is not okay. You can't expose parents' children to inappropriate, unage-appropriate things, to sexual content, and a whole host of other things, and just expect that you can find a one-size-fits-all that incorporates also every crazy person who says that a child should be exposed to sexual stuff. They're trying to force you guys into a box that doesn't exist. You can't make them happy and do anything that even closely resembles being appropriate for children. And that's not a matter of opinion, that's not me saying that, that's just common sense. And I would like to think that that's the lens that we're supposed to look at things through, not finding some sort of common ground or something that halfway sells out our children's safety and security. But something that wholeheartedly, I hope that you guys have the room to stand in a place that wholeheartedly eliminates you guys from being lumped in with a large group of people that seem to have the opinion that the right thing to do here is expose kids to sexual content. I shouldn't even be up here having to say this, it's kind of silly, but when people come down to the mic and argue the other side, strange or not, somebody actually has to get up and say that. We can't have you guys disseminating and making available sexual content to kids. That's obscene and absurd. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Cindy Taylor from Town. I'd like to commend the students who spoke about book banning at the last board meeting. One of the students spoke about their experiences reading The Bluest Eye and the Perks of Being a Wallflower, and it brought to mind an event in my life. Like that student, I also experienced trauma as a child. But later, when I was 11 years old, a school librarian helped change my life. She introduced me to the book, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. That classic book, written in 1943, is one that I feel certain you would now want to ban. It contains passages about violence, adultery, loss of faith, sexual assault, and pedophilia. It taught me about the immigrant experience, poverty, alcoholism, and abuse. It also taught me about hope, resilience, perseverance, and the power of education and hard work. It taught me that in my own experience, I was not alone, and it furthered my resolve to excel in my education. It may be hard to believe that one book could be that impactful, but that's the power of literature. My point is simply that literature must be evaluated in its fullest context and not simply based on one or two passages. I would ask you to consider, especially in the removal of books by Black and LGBTQ authors, that trauma is going to be central to many of their stories. They are sharing the truth of the experience of marginalized people, and that is often going to be difficult to read. Through these stories, however, we learn a great deal about compassion, empathy, justice, and shared humanity. As another caution, please do consider the constitutional issue. The Supreme Court has ruled on the issue of censorship in schools in the Island Trees decision in 1982. That decision confirmed that book removal is not constitutionally permitted simply because school officials disagree with the contents. In other words, personal opinion is irrelevant. Educational value is what is important here, as determined by professionals. Earlier this year, the St. Louis School District returned The Bluest Eye to its library shelves on threat of a lawsuit. Those of us who advocate for the works of Toni Morrison and others to be available, not forced on students, but to be available, we are not outliers. The Bluest Eye has been recommended by the National Council of Teachers of English, the Accelerated Reader Series for high school students, and many others. Books by Morrison appear on many required reading lists for high school students, including Catholic high schools. Please focus instead on student achievement and school culture. Thank you. Thank you.
children are loved by, I hope, everyone, including God. But that is all children. All children don't come from the same background. All children don't need the same things from us at school. From what I know of Jesus, he included everyone. He wanted everyone to suffer less. He suffered tremendously to make that happen. I think we as a community need to get outside just our comfort zones and realize that we need to take care of all of the children who need an education. We need to quit fighting about things that already have an easy solution. Parents already have a way to protect their children from books in the school that they feel are objectionable. We need to be supporting our students, helping them read, learn math, get along, follow rules, follow regulations, and we need to support our teachers. And before you start thinking of arming teachers, which is a moot point when it's still illegal in the state, please ask your teachers. They're the ones on the front line, along with the principals and the staff. I don't think you've asked for their input at all as how to make their schools, their lives, their students' lives safer. When guns are the number one killer of our children, the thought of making more guns available horrifies me. I'm just asking you to reach a little deeper and try to think of people that are not like just ourselves.
Thank you. As I'm looking around, I don't see anybody getting ready to come forward. But please know that you're welcome. Spoke too soon.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Dale Freeman. I'm the pastor of Fellowship Baptist Church here in Madison. Began to look at some of the school board priorities. I noted number 3 when I was thinking about a particular subject that I'm going to address this evening, is to implement best practices to address the well-being, dignity, value of students and staff, so all members of our school community feel supported and respected. And as I thought about this subject of sexual explicit materials and books, and taking some of the books out of the curriculum in the library, I thought about the vast responsibility that we all have as adults, as parents, school board members, teachers, pastors, community workers. While we may not agree exactly what those books are, the content of them, I think we all realize that sex is a gift of God. And if it's going to be discussed, it needs to be discussed in the light of the giver of that gift. Not in a debased, devalued way as some of the material that has been pointed out by the school board. And I think that we ought to commend the school board for taking that stand and looking into this material to know that they're working with the parents for the good of their child and their children. It's not working against them. It's working with them. And so I want to say I appreciate you doing that. I think it's very important. also think that at some point we have to realize that it's not the educator's place to instruct and instill some things into our children that is parental. It's the parent's place. And I think that's how we work together. It's not, you know, the parents need the teachers need the parents. We work together as a community. And so I don't think that this is by any means overstepping. I think it's working with. And so I want to say thank you. Thank you for putting that together. And thank you for suggesting that this explicit material be removed. It's really appalling that we would have to have this conversation. You know, do we or do we not put explicit sexual material to our high schoolers? We should not be having this discussion. I hope each of you have a happy Thanksgiving. May God bless you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matt. I'm from Madison. I always find it very interesting when I come to these meetings. Yeah, obviously you have two very defined sides on things, right? And as I sit here tonight and I listen to both sides kind of give their argument, it literally sounds like, you know, I think the one lady earlier said something about the children had a constitutional right, First Amendment constitutional right to come in here and practice free speech. Do they not have a constitutional Second Amendment right? Do the teachers not have a constitutional Second Amendment right? It's just kind of really interesting for me. We as a culture seem to go and pick and choose the things that best fit our desires or what we want to happen, but we tend to fail and leave out the rest of that, right? If you're going to sit in here and come and talk about having a constitutional First Amendment right to say and practice free speech, you also have to recognize the same aspect that others in this school would have the Second Amendment right to defend themselves and protect themselves and others. Let's not forget that there's a whole document that is all-encompassing of all of our rights. So if you're going to pick and choose which rights you think are important to you, understand that somebody else is going to pick and choose the rights that are important to them. I'd also like to throw out there, I do think that the thing in question here today was to send, wasn't it to send something to the teachers to ask them if they felt comfortable with this? So it's not like they're deciding anything now. So do your homework, do your education, read up on these things before you come here. It is to ask the teachers and the staff if they felt comfortable. I don't think they were deciding anything yet or not on the firearm thing. So throw that out there. I'll also throw out one last thing, the school board as an offer. If that ever becomes an option, I come from a community and work with a community of folks, and nothing against our sheriff's department, they're great folks, but I work with a community of folks that are the most highly trained firearms personnel in the world, and they will be graciously willing to come up and give training free of charge, or I will pay out of my own pocket to have every one of the staff members and that chooses to do that have the latest and greatest personal defense training, security training, active shooter training. I'll pay out of pocket for that. If I have to, I'll make it a business. I'll pay for my business to do it. So I just wanted to leave that for you guys.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Meadows. I'm from Brightwood. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, ma'am.
I wasn't planning on speaking. I came because I met somebody, a stranger in a grocery store, food line, who said that the meeting was here tonight. I have grandchildren in college at Virginia Tech and Longwood. And one of the things that worries me is our local functions and civic involvement. And I'm really glad I came to hear people speak from the community. When the agenda is specifying best practices, my concern is that you're dealing with a national standard. And I would hope that we in Virginia have better than best. In other words, I don't agree with the best practices that are set up nationally. I am not in support of the NEA and other national organizations. I think the priority of our children here in Madison County is greater than a global community. And so I would like to suggest and to support you all and to say that our children locally suffer in different ways or lack resources that major cities have. We have different priorities, a greater need of rural help and education. And so when best practices are stated as a goal, I would hope that you would publicize those best practices so that I can actually see what your methodology is on what you're trying to set up. I'm a firm believer in the Constitution. I think that children don't quite have all the constitutional rights because they're minors. The parents have the rights over the children. And so it is a partnership, and nobody wants to see teachers against parents and vice versa. So thank you for your hard work. And I would hope next time that you could put something on the billboard instead of the powder puff football and put that the school board is meeting. Because I got here about 10 minutes late because all of a sudden I went, oh yeah, that's right. And I think maybe we'd have a better turnout, and civic engagement is really important whether we have children in school or not. I'm a taxpayer and I love our children, the kids who work in the stores, the high schoolers that I go and support the games for. And thank you for your hard work. Thank you.
Are there further comments that the public would like to make? If not, this concludes our public comment section of our agenda. We do thank all of you for coming and being brave enough to come up and speak whatever it is that you want us to know, because